Hello, everyone, and welcome to Women of Grace. I'm Johnette Williams. Today's guest reminds us that, to some degree or another, all of us experience grief. However, not all grief is the same. Some griefs are harder to work through than others. One such grief is the grief following an abortion. What are its signs and symptoms, and what are its effects? Can it be resolved? We'll find out as we discuss hope and healing in the aftermath of abortion.
We are women of grace round the throne of the Lord Most High. And we lift up our praise from the depths of our souls. Hear our cry. O Lamb of God, it is our one desire to see your holy face, women of grace.
Grief caused by trauma can lead to what the medical community defines as complicated grief, a prolonged grief, which impacts daily living, negatively affecting our emotional, mental, spiritual, and even physical well-being. Here to talk with us about this kind of grief in relation to abortion is our guest, Father Ben Cameron, a member of the Fathers of Mercy. The Fathers of Mercy are under the patronage of the Immaculate Conception of the Blessed Virgin Mary and are committed to the propagation of the faith and the salvation of souls. They accomplish this mission primarily through the apostolate of preaching parish missions and ministering to those in rural or neglected areas. Father Ben Cameron has worked in the post-abortion ministry for numbers of years and is the founder and spiritual director of the Confraternity of Our Lady of Mercy, a new confraternity in the Church for women and men once wounded by abortion but now seeking holiness. He is the author of Healing the Deepest Wounds, a pastoral guide to abortion, trauma, and grief, available for you at EWTN's religious catalog. Just go to EWTNRC.com to order. Now, let's welcome Father Ben Cameron. Father Ben, welcome back to Women of Grace.
Thank you.
It's been some time. We were talking about that.
Been.
I think we've decided it's been about 15 years since you were last on the set.
Probably.
And I apologize for not having you back sooner. The work that you do is so absolutely important. And I want to thank you for this book. This book is an absolute treasure in I think, what do I want to say, a condensed but very comprehensive way. You have led us through some of the major aspects of post-abortion grief and how to be healed from it, right. How to let God enter into that and really raise us to a new place in life and a new level of holiness. So friends, I really do want to encourage you to get out to EWTNRC.com to get a copy of this book. If you've had an abortion, it's essential for you. If you have been complicit in or participated in an abortion, it's essential for you. If you have family members or loved ones or friends who have gone through an abortion, absolutely essential for them, and really one that you should be schooled in, and just so that if in conversation something comes up with someone, you might be of great service, help, and spiritual companionship to that person. So, you know, Father, we talk about this business of grief, and you spend the first chapter of your book really outlining for us what grief is and taking us through different scenarios, inclusive of abortion, but also kinds of situations that can lead to a very complicated grief. I found that very helpful and useful. Will you share with us a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you. A lot of times we just imagine that all grief is the same, but when a person has been involved in, has some responsibility, or at least feels responsible for what happened, say they were driving a car and made a mistake and that led to somebody's death, they're going to feel their grief is going to be much more difficult, much more complicated than someone who wasn't driving the car, who, you know, just a family member died, because there's that level of, I did this. If I hadn't done this, what if when the words what if, or the question what if comes in, what if this, what if I'd done something different, that grief is going to be more complicated. It's going to be harder to work through. And so recognizing that, and that's true with abortion, it's true with a lot of times, like I said, somebody dies in a car accident. I've known people in construction who said, they made a mistake and it led to somebody's death, and they have a very difficult time working through that. So this is a reality, and a lot of times people are like, well, why can't I just get over it? Or sometimes people who are wanting to be helpful say things that are just not helpful at all, like, well, you just need to get over it and move on with your life. It's like, no, it's not that easy. It's something that we sometimes need help. We need people to walk with us in the grief, and to help us to untangle those knots, if you will, and people who will just listen with real compassion. Too often, somebody who's had a deep loss is expected to, a month later to be completely back to normal, and it's not possible, and we shouldn't have those expectations. So, yeah. That's basically what I was getting into with the complicated.
Yeah, and I have met some individuals where they have repressed the grief.
Yes.
Right, and they do just get on with it.
Right.
They don't face it. They don't own up to it. I've seen that with regard to people that have lost children. I've seen it with regard to people who have lost, other family members, as well as positions or relationships crash. Or, but I've also seen it in people who have had an abortion, and they bottle that up. They just say, well, I just moved on from that, everything is fine and dandy. But you can look, at aspects of their lives and see that, no, there's a recurring pattern of behavior here that's just not healthy, that's probably related to that initial wound.
Sometimes, like when a person loses a spouse, for example, say if a woman loses her husband and she's got small children at home, or the opposite, a man loses his wife and they've got children at home, they will kind of put the grief on the back burner and put a wall up and box it in, because I've got to be there for the children. And that's fine temporarily, but eventually you've got to actually take the time to work on the grief, and to face it, to work through the emotions, to work through the loss. But with abortion, a lot of time it's a real protective measure. A person is putting up these walls because they're trying to say it didn't really hurt. It was something I had to do, and if I hadn't done it, I wouldn't be able to finish college. I wouldn't be able to have this job. I wouldn't be able to have the career I want. And so it's this wall to say, I'm not going to face this. And as a temporary psychological protection, it may work for a while, but that wall begins to crack. And sometimes it's years, sometimes it's 5 years, 10 years, 20, 30 years, and that wall will just come down, and it's like a dike breaking, because we cannot wall something like that off. At some point we have to face it, and we have to be able to acknowledge the reality of the loss. And I think that's the real trial for a lot of women who've had abortions, is that to actually face the fact that I was a mother and my child is gone, and I didn't have a funeral, and I don't have a burial place, but I need to find something to help me to work through this. I need to find the resources to work through this, because if a woman loses a child at the age of 2, there's going to be a funeral, and there's going to be a grave, and there's going to be people who hug her and help her and stuff. But when there's been an abortion, a lot of times it's like, well, just get over it. It's a choice she made. Or people don't know, and she doesn't want people to know. But a lot of times the few people who do know are like, well, it was your choice, so just get over it. Doesn't help. Yeah. So that wall that's trying to protect the psyche can only stay up for so long.
Well, one of two things is going to happen, and I think that your illustration, your metaphor there of a dike, is absolutely an accurate one. It's either going to break open, then there's going to be this major flood of emotions, which need all to be handled, in most cases individually, because that's a complicated mess at that point. Or the other thing that's going to happen is the woman's going to crack. There's going to be a psychotic break. Something is going to happen. There's going to be a nervous breakdown, something of that nature. So you know, oftentimes, especially with something like an abortion father, she's responsible for the death. I mean, she had it in most cases, and we're going to be talking about complications with regard to all of this too in an upcoming show. But you know, oftentimes she's made that choice, and she has really been taught by the culture of the day, and maybe even taught in a more formal setting, such as a classroom, that this is perfectly all right to do. So if this was perfectly all right to do, why do I feel this way? What is going on in me? You know, I should be able to handle this because everybody says it's okay. So what's the problem? And there's nowhere to go, really, to get that kind of counseling outside of those beautiful ministries such as the one that you're involved with, that walks women through this process.
Yeah, that's the problem, is the psychological community as a whole denies that there's a problem. They say that, you know, abortion is not an issue and there's no such thing as post-abortion trauma. And there's flawed studies that will support that. Like Planned Parenthood will do, I talk about this in the book, they will call people within a year of the abortion and like, how are you doing? And the fact that 80% of the women they call never pick up the phone when they see it's Planned Parenthood calling. And then a lot of them don't want to say that there's a problem, or they're still very much, they're feeling okay because they've got that wall up and it's still pretty new. The emotional concrete, if you will, of the wall is still pretty fresh. And they say, I'm doing good. But in fact, many are not doing well. That's why they didn't answer the phone, or they don't want to tell Planned Parenthood, because why am I going to tell the people who victimized me that they hurt me, you know? And then others, it takes years before they're ready to acknowledge the pain. And there are women who go through their entire life and probably never actually acknowledge the pain, and never actually process the grief, or acknowledge that there even is a grief, or there has been a loss. Not every woman who's had an abortion suffers trauma from it, you know, shows any sign of suffering, but many do. And there was one retreat I've worked many retreats over the years, but one retreat stands out in my mind. Every woman making the retreat was at least 30 years out from her abortion.
Oh my goodness.
And that much time to go by before they were able to acknowledge what was going on, and sometimes that, where did my life turn into a train wreck? Where did I go off the rails? And then when they finally saw that it was at the abortion, then they were able to come and begin their healing journey. Well,
you know, I'll just share a very quick story with you. Many years ago, this is many, many years ago, we had done a program here at EWTN on abortion and the aftermath of abortion. And I remember I was at our ministry, and the phone rang, and I answered the phone, and it was this woman, and she was sobbing. And this woman told me that she was 80 years old. She had an abortion when she was in her 20s. So I can't even begin to imagine what kind of an abortion that was. And the program was the first time she had permission to really acknowledge that and weep for that. You know, situation, circumstance in her life, and this horrible decision that she made. And I couldn't believe that for 60 years, this was bottled up inside of her. What a shame. And what women need is an environment of love and compassion that helps them to reveal what in many cases is a deep, dark secret, or to begin to re-examine the cultural lie that they were told, and begin to realize that, yes, you know, there is a part of me that died with that moment that the Lord wants to bring back to life within me.
And that's what the different ministries that I highlight in the book, all in different approaches, are working at, and bringing that deep, dark secret to light, helping people to acknowledge it, helping people to bring it to God, to bring that wound to God for the spiritual healing, helping people who've not been to confession to be able to make that big step of making a good confession, but also starting to process the emotional parts of the wound, the relationship losses as well. And each of the ministries, I have different chapters on different ministries, goes about that in different ways. And there's no ministry that's perfect.
Yes.
You know, as long as it's made up of humans, it will not be perfect. You know, this side of heaven, nothing's perfect. But they do a very good job in helping to unpack those different elements of the wound. But yeah, it's for many people, it's a deep, dark secret, and they haven't had anybody who they felt like they were safe to share it with, or had a compassionate heart to share it with. And that's a lot of why I wrote the book. My original target audience was actually my brother priests. But then as I wrote it, it was like, this could help anybody in ministry. By the time I finished it, it was like, this could help anybody who's got somebody they love who's hurting. And then I started having people who are post-abortive telling me that it really helped them, you know. But I wanted priests and people in ministry and people with loved ones to have an idea of what the wound is, and then what's available and what are the different elements of healing, so that we can approach people and show compassion and help them in that journey of healing.
Well, I know that there's one chapter in there actually that's addressed to the priest specifically, right? And very important, because oftentimes a priest feels ill-equipped to talk with a woman about such a deep wound, but also about such a personal issue. Well, friends, when we come back, more with Father Ben Cameron on the other side of our break. But I do want to send you out to EWTN's religious catalog. It's EWTNRC.com, the home of holy reminders, as I like to say, in memory of our foundress, Mother Angelica. The book is called Healing the Deepest Wounds, a pastoral guide to abortion, trauma, and grief. And it's a must-have. I think that everybody should have this book, because I'm pretty certain you're sitting there ticking off in your own mind the number of individuals that you know who have been through this horrible trauma in her life or in his life, which we'll talk about when we come back. Also, that person could be you. And we want you to know that God loves you, and that there is no sin that is greater than his mercy. And Holy Mother Church wants to embrace you in her loving arms and bring you to wholeness, happiness, and new life. We're going to be right back with Father Ben. Stay with us. Welcome back, friends. We're visiting with our guest today, Father Ben Cameron. Father Ben is a father of mercy, and what a perfect order for him to be a religious in, you know, because he is a dispenser of mercy to hundreds of women through the years who have suffered with an abortion, but not women only, and we'll be talking about that. He gives us excellent guidance in this wonderful book that's available for you at EWTN's religious catalog. That's EWTNRC.com. It's called Healing the Deepest Wounds, a pastoral guide to abortion, trauma, and grief. I'm recommending that everybody that's watching today gets a copy of this book, whether you have experienced an abortion or not, whether you've been complicit in an abortion or not, whether you have a family member that has had an abortion or not. The point and the fact of the matter is that at some point in time you will come across someone who has, and you will have a good place to direct them and guide them. And I think it'll give you some background knowledge to help them and to aid them by way of friendship and love. So, available for you at EWTNRC.com, Healing the Deepest Wounds. You know, Father, and I mean everything I'm saying about this book, obviously, because it is such a helpful guide. And we were talking about, you know, the way in which abortion can afflict an individual. Sometimes, in the very early days, how many women come out of an abortion clinic crying, but sometimes, you know, it's something that they repress for a number of years, at least the grief of it, maybe even for up to 30. You said you had a retreat, and everybody in that retreat was 25 or 30 years out from an abortion, and they were just now beginning to explore it. It can be a difficult thing for somebody to look at, because they've taken the life of their own child.
Yeah, the loss of a child is one of the deepest wounds a person can suffer. And then when there's that sense that I did this, though many women are not fully responsible, because they had an abortion under pressure or coercion. Some women were literally forced, for example, trafficking victims. But even women who less than that, sometimes they were under a lot of pressure, psychological pressure, emotional pressure to have an abortion. But they still feel responsible because there's still this, like, what if I had run away? Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? And so that's that complicated grief. And the fact that if they were under pressure, that makes the trauma of it, the trauma of the wound, the psychic wound, but also the physical trauma done to the body, that much more real.
Yes.
Because anytime that we're not fully free and forced or pressured to do something, it causes more of an internal conflict. And that can actually make the wound more raw and needing to be faced and needing to be worked at. So even when women are not fully morally responsible for it, there still can be that deep emotional wound that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and I think of those 3 conditions for a mortal sin, and so you have to know it's a very grave sin, that it's a very serious sin, and you have to freely choose to do it anyway.
Right.
And this is what you're talking about.
Right.
So the culpability is lessened, but what isn't lessened is the interior effect of that in all of those areas of our being.
And that loss, because there's the empty womb, knowing that there was a baby here and there isn't a baby now.
Yes.
And a woman's body was, especially with her first pregnancy, was preparing for nursing the baby, and then there isn't a baby to nurse. And so there's trauma to the physical trauma to the body.
Yes.
Not just when the abortionist did a bad job and botched it and literally hurt her with his instruments, which happens too, but there's the trauma of the loss.
Yeah.
And so the fact that secular society denies that it is real doesn't matter, because interiorly, a lot of us know that it's real.
Yeah.
I know it's real because I've dealt with hundreds of women over the years. I've been involved with this ministry for over 2 decades. And between women I've ministered to in my parish missions and retreats all over the English-speaking world, and the Rachel's Vineyard retreats I've worked on, it's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of women that I have interacted with who suffered this kind of wound.
Yeah. It's something interesting, too, that I want to mention when we talk about the effects of abortion. We're going to get into quite a bit of that tomorrow. But for the moment, I want to talk a little bit about the physical effects. You've mentioned some of them, that there is such a thing as botched abortions. But you also mentioned something very important, and that is the woman's body is preparing to nurse. Right. And we know that the incidence of breast cancer in abortive women is higher.
Yes.
I think, is it 47, 49%?
I'm not sure the percentage, but it is significantly higher, and it's especially when it was the first pregnancy.
Yes.
Because during the first pregnancy is when a woman's body is really changing. Her breasts are changing, preparing for nursing for the first time. And that's artificially interrupted.
That's right.
The same thing does not happen when there's a natural miscarriage, but there's this sudden change, and the hormonal change so suddenly can have an impact.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that when a woman has breast cancer, anybody should assume that she did anything wrong, because there was always been breast cancer.
Yes.
But just for women to know that they're more at risk if there has been an abortion.
And you increase your chances.
Yes.
And one of the other things I was thinking of is David Reardon. I believe it was David Reardon that did so much research decades ago on this. All of that information was suppressed.
Right.
And remains pretty much suppressed, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, David Reardon's, different people have tried to suppress it, but it's out there. His research, Dr. Martha Shuping, a friend of mine involved with Rachel's Vineyard, has done a lot of research in this area. And there's some other people. I've got a reference to a priest who's done a lot of studies related, sociologist. I don't remember his name offhand, but who's done a lot of studies on these very things and relating to abortion and its aftermath.
Yeah. Well, we're sharing some really hard facts with you, friends, in these programs. There's no question about it. But it's important. It's important for us to know. It says in sacred scripture that, the truth sets you free, right? And we want that. We want freedom. Freedom from the oppression of what a chosen abortion perhaps has leveled on you. And so I'm encouraging you to get a copy of Father's book. Let this be the beginning of being set free, because that's what God wants for you. He wants to set you free, and when the Lord frees you, you are freed indeed. We're going to give you some really good resources as we move through our time together this week. Have your pencil and your pad ready to mark it down. If you yourself do not need this personally, I'm sure that you might know someone who does, and you can be a guardian angel to that person. The book, Healing the Deepest Wounds, A Pastoral Guide to Abortion, Trauma, and Grief, available for you at EWTN's Religious Catalog. That's EWTNRC.com. Inviting you, too, to check out our website, womenofgrace.com. Till we're together again, God bless you now. Bye-bye.